The BYU Cougars remain red hot on the recruiting trail with the commitment of Bruce Branch III, the third five-star prospect in as many recruiting classes for the BYU basketball program. And also, AJ Dybantsa, did he drop a bombshell on the NBA draft cycle? Get into all of that on a live edition of Locked On Cougars.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into a special edition of Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, 14-year credentialed media member at BYU, your resident expert and insider, your host here on the show. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And more importantly, thank you for making all of us folks over at Locked On, the #1 sports podcast network. All right, coming up on today's show, big news in the world of BYU recruiting, because we just found out that Bruce Branch, not just found out, but earlier today, found out that Bruce Branch III is going to be a BYU Cougar, and that's some sizable news for Kevin Young and company as they head into the final stanza of this season, and obviously looking ahead to next year. And then we'll also talk about AJ Dembansa. Did he drop a major bombshell on the the NBA draft cycle, and what that could mean for him, what that could mean for BYU, and a whole lot more. So if you are out there watching this live, please comment. Let us know what you like about the show. Please like the show as well. And as always, thank you for all of your support. All right, so big news being dropped today that Bruce Branch III is going to be a BYU Cougar. Announced that on NBA Today, and I thought it was a really, really touching moment as he talked about all the different people he had to thank, and obviously got really emotional about his mom as he announced his commitment to BYU. And that shows that this young man, he seems to understand that basketball is a means to an end, and that's a really cool thing. But the big news is BYU gets a third straight recruiting cycle with a five-star prospect, and Bruce Branch is yet another guy that Kevin Young is going to endeavor to build around here for the BYU basketball program going into next year. And the situation is interesting here because remember, Bruce, if you recall, was originally a member of the 2027 recruiting cycle. So he's supposed to be a year out, but then reclassified to the 2026 cycle. He was considered to be the top prospect when he reclassified in the 2027 recruiting class, and has since moved down in the rankings in the 2026 cycle. I saw today that he's 8th in the 24/7 composite ratings in terms of the overall prospects. But nonetheless, a five-star talent, and brings another recruiting win for Kevin Young and company to continue to kind of just generate a whole lot of publicity for the BYU basketball program. And if you've watched Bruce Branch's highlights, he plays a prolific prep out in California, actually a program that once upon a time AJ Dybantsa was attending a school and playing for. He is a guy that may have similar size to AJ Dybantsa, listed at 6'8", 200 and some odd pounds. Plays a very different game. And very is probably too strong of a term, but a different game. Bruce Branch has got more of a pure outside stroke, the ability to really just catch and shoot three-pointers. And I think all of us look at this year's BYU basketball program and the dearth of outside shooting that really kind of hurt BYU spacing. And that is a big reason why I think BYU was so heavily prioritizing a guy like Bruce Branch in this recruiting cycle. It's nothing against AJ Dybantsa, because AJ is a seminal talent in his own right. But think about it. The different five-star talents BYU's had is they've had Jaeger Dielman. And when Jaeger was at BYU, he was kind of just their consummate point guard playmaker, and has gone on to the NBA and shown a really nice three-point shot, but he really didn't flash that at BYU. AJ Dembansa, well, he is a mid-range guy who really likes to attack the basket and change how defenses obviously defend him, and he's kind of a force unto himself. And in this case, Bruce Branch, while he has the ability to get to the rim, I'm not saying he doesn't have that ability. His catch and shoot ability off the bounce, all the different terms that you hear about guys and their skill sets as a basketball player, he flashes all of that. And it's another cog in the wheel for a guy like Kevin Young to build around. And you combine a Bruce Branch with a Dean Ruckert, who obviously is a local prospect, of high school talent in his own right, from Timpview High School, literally just up the road from BYU. They've got the makings of a very, very strong freshman class at BYU. And obviously, I think we all expect that they will work in the transfer portal to surround Bruce and Dean and everybody else, whoever remains on BYU's roster, they will go about retooling this roster to accentuate the strengths of that team. Kevin Young's been very adamant that the transfer portal will always be a part of how he goes about building rosters out at BYU. And obviously there can be some argument about the roster construction for this season, but injuries and the like have derailed that. But it doesn't take away anything from the fact that BYU remains a force in the recruiting sphere when it comes to college basketball. Kevin Young, he's got an ability to go out, attract the best and brightest talent, and bring it to Provo, Utah, which just 2-3 years ago, it was like a pipe dream that could be a thing for the BYU Cougars. So really, really cool stuff. And I think that the other thing about the Bruce Branch commitment is it shows that even though BYU may not be operating at peak efficiency right now as a basketball program, it doesn't change the perspective of these young men. A guy like Bruce Branch is looking at BYU and saying, okay, well, they developed Jaeger Dielman into the 8th overall selection. AJ Dybantsa, who we'll talk about here momentarily, is projected at worst as a top 3 pick in the NBA draft this summer. And I've said it before on this podcast. I'll reiterate it here. If I had my druthers and I was the GM or the team that had the first overall selection, I'd be picking AJ. I think his two-way ability is unmatched in this recruiting class or this NBA draft class. And there's a lot of top shelf talent in this NBA draft class, but I think AJ is the best of the bunch. So it shows that Bruce is looking at it pragmatically and saying, okay, yeah, well, BYU's developing these guys and really putting money where their mouth is. And Kevin Young said he wanted this place to be an NBA factory. He wanted to be a place where guys could come and develop and ultimately end up as NBA players. And that doesn't mean you have to be one and done at BYU. Richie Saunders, notwithstanding the fact that he has an ACL tear, Richie's going to be an NBA player. And that shows that you can kind of go different routes at BYU and still end up where you want to be, and that is as an NBA talent in the NBA draft. So really awesome to see a nice addition for the BYU Cougars on the basketball front and recruiting. And as April says here, we needed this. It is a punch in the arm, or I guess not a punch in the arm, but like a jolt to the system, and really shows the BYU still's got juice out there on the recruiting circuit, even though this current basketball season probably hasn't lived up to the expectations that anybody had. So we'll talk more about BYU plays here. Let's see, it's 5:40 p.m. Mountain Time. So they play in an hour and 20 minutes. Consider this the pre-game show. But they obviously face off against Cincinnati. And we'll talk more about the current season at hand. We'll do a full edition of the podcast coming for you guys bright and early tomorrow morning with a reaction to whatever happens against Cincinnati. But even with this season not necessarily living up to the expectations or the hype that I think any of us had, Kevin Young continues to show that he can go out and bring really, really top shelf talent to Provo. And I think in time, he will get the roster construction ingredients, or whatever you want to call it, the secret sauce there figured out. And I think BYU will continue to win at a pretty high level. They haven't necessarily won at the level I think we all expected this year, but yeah, I think Bruce Branch continues a strong run of talented players coming to BYU and ultimately, hopefully, ending up as NBA talents and going on to brighter and better things and continuing to kind of build that cycle. It's like a snowball effect. You see a guy like Jaeger Dielman pick BYU, ends up as the 8th overall selection. AJ Dembansa, who was at one point the top prospect in his recruiting class, then ceded that spot to Darren Peterson in some recruiting rankings. Well, he's really showing that he's going to continue that trend. Bruce Branch is next. Well, who's the next person out there? And so long as BYU keeps that rolling here, things are going to be good in Provo. And I think that is the nice part, is to consider, yeah, they're still doing work in the recruiting sphere. And it's not that they have fallen off by any means, because another 5-star talent on national television, on NBA Today, announcing he's going to BYU donning that royal blue jersey. Funny enough, he and AJ Dybantsa apparently will both wear the number 3 jersey for the BYU Cougars. All right. Speaking of AJ Dybantsa, he dropped a bit of a bombshell. He was talking with the Deseret News and said that he may want to come back for another year at BYU. Is he serious about this? Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. College basketball is nonstop, big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. That's a mouthful, I get it, but you can build any college hoops parlay you want. Rivalry games, ranked matchups, BYU against Cincinnati, BYU against Texas Tech, going into the Big 12 tournament. Whatever you're into, you can do it. You can mix spreads, totals, player props, and match how you see the slate playing out. Go safe, go bold, right at the team you've been following all season long, in this case, BYU. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started today. That's FanDuel.com. It's all courtesy, once again, of FanDuel, where you can play your game. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. Now, if you are trying to hire for a position, whether you're a hiring manager, you're an owner, workplace chaos, deadlines obviously seem to stack up, inbox overflowing, and that one position you still got to fill, when the pressure's on, you need that right hire. This is a job for Indeed-sponsored jobs. They'll be reaching people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. More importantly, there's a stat that says it all. In the minute I'll be talking to you guys here, if companies like yours will make 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates. It's less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners to this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves. Go to Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed here on Locked On Cougars. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Thank you for being here on Locked On Cougars and making it your first listen of the day. If you have not liked this show, if you're watching this live, click that little thumbs up icon right there. If I can work it right there. It helps the algorithm, obviously. Like the show. If you're watching this after the fact or listening to it wherever you get your podcast, appreciate all of your patronage and your support of the podcast. It's how we do business around here. So thank you for being here with us. All right. McKay Coppins from the Deseret News caught up with AJ Dybantsa and did an exclusive one-on-one interview. And in said interview, a bit of a bombshell was dropped by none other than AJ himself when he was essentially asked, okay, well, your future obviously lies in the NBA and you're probably going to the NBA draft. And he kind of slowed everything down and said, hey, who said I'm leaving right away? He said that my mom, and speaking of AJ, he said kind of his mother, wants him to graduate, wants him to get a degree, and said she was thinking about his post-basketball playing career and understanding that I think AJ, in his heart of hearts, has really enjoyed the college experience. I think you can just kind of see that in the way he has interacted with BYU fans and the way he's gone about kind of working himself into the greater BYU community. This is a guy that had no connections to BYU. He's from Brockton, Massachusetts, and ultimately decided BYU is where he wanted to be and really has ingratiated himself into the hearts of Cougar Nation. And while I'm going to be very honest, there's no way in Hades, I think that AJ is sticking around at BYU. And that's nothing against what he's saying here. I don't think that AJ, it'd be in his best interest to return to BYU. And why I say that is, the 2027 NBA draft cycle is considered to be weaker than this 2026 cycle. But when you are still considered to be, at worst, a top 3 selection in this draft, and I would take him number 1 overall personally, go make that money, young man. And I will also add this. I think that BYU will help him graduate in time. BYU's got a number of different pathways to help people, whether they're on campus or not, to graduate. Obviously, there's continuing education. There is they have all these different features, and you don't necessarily have to be on campus anymore to take classes. Could he do it during the summers? Could he do it during different parts of the NBA season? Maybe so. But the simple fact of the matter is AJ is going to make an incredibly high amount of money playing in the NBA. If you have paid attention to how the NBA is trending with regards to its salary cap, player salaries, and the like, we're not far off in the next 5 years of guys signing contracts that could pay them north of $100 million on an annual basis. And you think I'm crazy? We're not that far. Guys are making $70 million pretty quick here. So if AJ goes and plays in the NBA, let's say for 10 to 15 years, I think obviously if he has the type of career that he envisions, he's going to make a nice long run in the NBA of it. This is a young man who conservatively could make $1 billion in on-court earnings, and that doesn't even include all the off-court stuff, endorsements and the like, that he already has. He's got an NIL deal with Nike. He's got an NIL deal with Red Bull, among other things out there. He's obviously established his own foundation that I think is doing great things in Provo, and also Massachusetts, etc. He's done some incredible things already in his basketball career, but the simple fact of the matter is, while I understand his mom maybe wanting him to stay around and get his degree, you're talking about generational wealth, everybody. There's no way. I would love to be dead wrong and just be thrown back in my face in a couple of months' time, or whenever he has to. When do they have to announce? I think it's in April. We have to officially announce whether you're entering the NBA draft or not. I would love for this to be thrown back in my face and to eat crow on it, but I just do not see any prudent way or any decision that would tell me that AJ needs to stick around at BYU. Yeah, could he season up a little bit at BYU? And obviously, if he were to team up with a guy like Bruce Branch, could they form a pretty incredible tandem of five-star talents? Absolutely. It would make BYU and Kevin Young all the more powerful going into next season. But once again, this is a business decision. And if it were my son and he was staring conservatively at those rookie contracts right now, $60 or $70 million at the outset in terms of being a top three pick, I would be telling him, hey, I understand mom wants you to get a degree. We'll get that in time, but let's go make that money. And obviously AJ is an incredible talent, and any NBA team that lands him is going to get an incredible player. But I think more important than that, is going to get a young man that I think that AJ understands his platform is bigger than almost anybody out there in terms of where he's at in life. He has got an outsized impact on how people perceive him as an athlete, but he's also using that for good. If you've not paid attention to what the AJ Dybantsa Foundation is already doing, you're missing out on showing, I think, what this young man is trying to do. He's not trying to make it just about him. Yes, he is going to be fabulously wealthy. He is never going to have to work another day in his life if he doesn't have to, if his NBA career goes the way I think he foresees it going. But he is trying to make a bigger impact on the world at large, and that is commendable. And he's already launched this. Like I said, he launched it about a month ago now. Here at BYU, he's already been doing some things with his hometown out in Brockton, Massachusetts, the greater Boston area. He's done things here in Utah, and those things will only increase as he breaks into the NBA. Whether it is the top of the NBA draft right now has teams like Sacramento. Obviously, the Utah Jazz are trying to weasel their way into the top of the NBA draft. Wherever he ends up, he will have an outsized impact, I think, A, on the court, but also B, off the court with his philanthropic endeavors as well. And that I think shows a lot of what he's capable of in impacting the world at large as a basketball player. So yeah, I know his dad said it earlier this year that we never said we were one and done. I know he's saying it to the Deseret News here, McKay Coppins. And while I would love for that to be the case, man, I do not see a scenario where it seems like sound financial advice in my mind for him to run it back at BYU. Go make your money, continue to be connected with BYU as long as you want to be connected with them. As I said, BYU's got so many different things with their continuing education and all the different, I know BYU pathways exists out there, etc. They can get him a degree, and that can be overcome. And I know his mom is worried about post-basketball life, but I think I look at LeBron James, for example. LeBron's already a billionaire, and LeBron never stepped foot on a college campus. And LeBron has become, by all accounts, an incredible business mind and never went to college. I think that you can surround yourself with people that can teach you all the things you would learn in college to help you have a successful life beyond that. But as I said, there are ways to get a degree from BYU without having to be on a campus for another year, 2, or 3. All right, that is going to do it for today's edition of the show. My good friend VWAG Golf says, Jake, I'm at the gym working my abs out for you right now. Okay, Ryan. thank you for that. I'm not sure how to interpret that, but I think a lot of this, like all these comments here, talking about a blind man says, I hope AJ would come back. NBA ain't going anywhere or getting any better. The NBA is not going anywhere, but let's also be very blunt. It's just, we're talking about tens of millions, potentially hundreds, if not billions of dollars down the line. And there's no time like the present to go and collect that if you're AJ. So yeah, while I respect him saying, hey, I never said I was done. I understand that he's not done. He hasn't made that decision, I guess, officially. If I were advising him, hey, you're up to the NBA and we'll talk with BYU about getting your degree down the line. All right, that's going to do it. Blind Mouse says, well, whatever happens, I'm happy with whatever. I agree with that. I do think that he is a young man who is really got a really smart head on his shoulders. He's got great parents by all accounts, and I hope that all works out for him. So I'm going to sign off now. I will let you guys get settled in for BYU in Cincinnati. Obviously, be on social media reacting to whatever happens tonight between the Bearcats and the Cougars. We'll see if AJ and company can get things rolling and bounce back from two pretty horrendous losses. And we'll do a full edition of the podcast coming up tomorrow, reacting to whatever happens in that game. Also probably get you some additional thoughts on Bruce Branch. I'm going to go and pull up more of his highlights and get more of a feel for who he is as a player. So we'll talk more about him and what he could do for BYU. And obviously we'll talk some BYU football as well, as we often do here on this podcast. So as always, thank you for all of your support. Please continue to subscribe, rate and review, share with your family and friends. And if you are a true everydayer, join the Locked On Cougars Everydayer Club. Get access to audio ad-free episodes. Get access to our members-only Discord server. If you want to get Locked On merch and that type of stuff, go to lockedoncougars.supercast.com. That's lockedoncougars.supercast.com. All right, so that's going to do it for this live edition of the show. As always, thank you for being with us, and catch you guys bright and early tomorrow morning with another another full edition of Locked On Cougars right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.